Hi there, my name is Peter Terrace, and what I want to talk to you today about is Bill C-9. Bill C-9 is also known as the Combating Hate Act. So their idea, our Canadian government, is thinking that they can combat hate using censorship. I disagree. I think the way you combat hate is by telling the truth, because hate is always lies. And so you combat that hate by telling the truth. Now let's remember back during COVID time, how if you posed a question, for example, I know someone who posed this question on one of their social medias. They said, if I get the COVID-19 vaccine, will I still get COVID? That was censored. It turns out that our government was coercing, and the US government, and we followed along. It was the US government that started it, but the Canadian government just followed along, and also coerced social media platforms to censor what we now know to be the truth. So they censored the truth, they amplified the lies. They did that without having a law. Now they are trying to push through Bill C-9 that will make that whole process legal. So if they say that what you're posting is misinformation or hate, that they can have it removed, and in fact, you could be charged for it. I want to read one of the things that they want to do. So it's meant to, the whole idea is meant to prevent hateful people from preventing people from entering religious places of worship. This is already illegal. This is completely a redundant law. But what's not redundant about it is how it's creating a law to basically censor people who they disagree with. Like just like in COVID time, there was no law, and yet the government was able to coerce social media companies to censor the truth and amplify the lies. Because we know now that even if you got the COVID-19 vaccine, guess what? You still got COVID. So it did nothing. So it turns out that that was a pretty darn good question that my friend posted on social media that he got censored for. Now they would have just arrested him if this passes through. And we're looking at a UK type of censorship where 20,000 people, over 20,000 people in the UK have been arrested for social media posts. This is the future that the globalists want for us. They want to be able to censor the truth, amplify the lies, and push their narrative. One of the things, so it says here that everyone commits an offense who willfully promotes hatred against any identifiable group by displaying in a public place, and they talk about the SS symbol. They talk about the Nazi symbol. So I want to talk about what is a hateful symbol. So a hateful symbol is one that promotes a lie or promotes somebody to do something evil to someone else. Okay, so the SS symbol we now know is a symbol that was used to promote hatred against Jews and identifiable groups. Nothing is being mentioned about the hateful symbol, like for example, the trans flag. We have a flag that promotes a lie. The little triangle part on the trans flag says that you can change your gender regardless of whether you're a boy or a girl. Well, that's a lie, because I know there are men or women who think, there are men who think there are women, there are men who dress as women, there are men who have surgeries in order to look more like women. There are also men who ingest hormones in order to look more like women, but men cannot become women. So it's a lie. That whole flag is a lie that says that a man can become a woman, when that's not true. So that's a hateful symbol by the definition that I've just given. Now their definition is promoting hatred. Then they define hatred. Okay, let's go back and see what they mean by hatred in their eyes, because I said one thing. I said that if you promote a lie, that's hatred. Telling the truth is always a loving thing to do. So hatred means the emotion that involves detestation or vilification that is stronger than disdain or dislike. So if you dislike someone, that's okay. If you disdain someone, that's okay too. But if you hate them, well, now that's illegal. Well, let's talk about, I guess, what kind of crimes are not hate crimes? Like if I go out and I break into someone's house and I steal their stuff, was that committed out of love? No, it's not. And I don't think any crime is ever committed out of love. How about if I go and kill someone? Is that committed out of love, or is that also kind of out of hatred? Isn't every crime committed out of hatred? Or is there any crime that's committed out of love? I don't know. I mean, this is very strange. And that's why this law is completely, utterly useless. Now, our Justice Minister, Mark Miller, he talked about how certain parts and certain passages of the Bible are illegal.
Good faith, Mr. Ross. In Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Romans, there's other passages, there is clear hatred towards, for example, homosexuals. I don't understand how the concept of good faith could be invoked if someone were literally invoking a passage from, in this case, the Bible, but there are other religious texts that say the same thing, and somehow say that this is good faith. I mean, clearly there are situations in these texts where these statements are hateful. They should not be used to invoke or be a defense, and there should perhaps be discretion for prosecutors to press charges. I just want to understand what your notion of good faith is in this context, where there are clearly passages in religious texts that are clearly hateful.
Or could be illegal because they promote hatred against a certain group. Now, I read through Bill C-9, and it said nothing about, it just said symbols. I guess letters are symbols and words are symbols. So that would mean that the Bible verses are also symbols. And now that those verses can be hatred because it says nothing. And in fact, you could be, if you are found guilty of these so-called hate crimes, thought crimes, because if you are basically found guilty of a speech crime, that is effectively the same thing, the exact same thing as a thought crime, because your speech is a manifestation of your thoughts. So once you have a law that controls your speech, that is a law that is effectively controlling your thoughts. So this whole law is a very dangerous dystopian law that is going to now give government the strength it needs to actually amplify lies using the force of government. They did it during COVID anyway, as I proved to you earlier. They did it already during COVID without a law. Now that they have a law that will control speech, they can arrest you for anything that is outside their narrative. Now, one of the things I find interesting, it says obstruction or interference with access. So if you're found guilty of obstructing or interfering with access to a place of religious worship, or administrative, social, cultural, or sports activities or events, an educational institution, including a daycare center, a residence for seniors. This one's interesting. Or a cemetery. Because we know those protests at cemeteries are getting out of hand, and that we need a law to make sure that access to cemeteries is not being blocked. And they bring it up again here, that if you block access to a cemetery, that you are going to be found guilty according to this law. So that's very important that they had to, make sure that they specified the cemetery. So this law is dystopian. It is using the force of government to control people's thinking. And if something is a lie, and if something is misinformation, shouldn't we just tell the truth about the thing? And then that way that will clear it up, rather than trying to censor it. And who is going to be the arbiter of truth? Who's going to decide whether something is hateful or hurtful? Because I could say, oh, I'm offended. I'm hurt by seeing that trans flag. I want them to be arrested because they're waving a trans flag near my church. And I can't go into my church now because I'm so traumatized by seeing that flag. I can't go into my church. I need my safe space so I can look at my navel and think about what I'm going to do next, because those people with their trans flags, I saw it, they were a couple hundred meters away from my church, and I couldn't go into my church because I was so traumatized. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. We need to stop trying to control people's behavior. When government, we know that we've given government too much power already. And where does this stem from? We need to start making government smaller. I'm Peter Terrace. Thank you so much. If you're watching this video and you enjoy what you see, I hope you consider pressing the like button below and also consider subscribing to the channel. I would really appreciate it, and it would really help me a lot. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to leave a comment in the comments below. Thank you so much.